Welcome, everyone, to the Goddess Vibration podcast. This is Allie.
And this is Tiara.
Starting today, we are going to start actually recording our beautiful faces because, it's just nice to actually see the face that comes with the voice.
It is nice. And we know you guys at least know our voices. And sorry, we've been kind of lazy about it. But here's our faces now. So now you have a face to the voice. And we'll continue doing this for the foreseeable future.
And
Because it's
today,
fun.
we actually want to talk about a conspiracy. And the conspiracy is called the dead internet theory. And I actually had come across this on Reddit where people were making complaints about the internet. And someone in the comments wrote to that post saying, Google the dead internet theory. And I was like, this is interesting. So I Googled the dead internet theory. And the conspiracy goes is that the internet actually died back in 2016. Okay, like think about that. That's 9 years ago. And essentially what that means is that the algorithms, it's like these big conglomerates, like, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, they have all removed like human content and started just putting bots, just like inflating posts using bots. And it's actually really, really crazy because anyone who is trying to be an entrepreneur or anyone who has started a business knows how much easier it was. Like to market yourself when there was free resources, when there was actually opportunity to build a business that wasn't going to cost you thousands of dollars on marketing. And if you've noticed, engagement has lowered significantly, like human to human engagement on posts, comments, likes, like all of that has changed and shifted with algorithms. And I honestly believe that the internet, the dead internet theory is actually true. And the reason why I think this is because my brother started a business, I would say back in 2008, 2009 is when he started building his business. It's like Facebook, Instagram, they had all these resources for entrepreneurs to really help people build their businesses and market, free marketing. And now it's just everything's, and you have to pay 500, 600, even thousands of dollars to pay for an ad. And it's just marketing has shifted so much and it's hard to get engagement on your posts, and people have to pay for fake followers or fake engagement now. So when I came across this internet died theory, I was just like, I believe it and I want to talk about it.
I got a first taste of that whole concept from being on Twitter, which is now X, which is, I think, a stupid name, but whatever. And on there, Elon Musk is very vocal. He bought Twitter a couple of years ago. And he has even talked about in some of his posts, like that he puts out his tweets, that even when he acquired Twitter, so many of the followers and the people that engaged on comments and discussions were bots. And he had some really high number too. He was like maybe 80% of the people on Twitter are actually bots or like fake posters. And I was just like, that is a really high number. Like it was just like, I get the idea and the concept behind the bots, right? It's just, I didn't realize how prolific it was. And I looked a little bit into the dead internet theory myself, and my mind was blown. It's just mind blowing the things and the lengths that they go to manipulate and control content now and even data. And it's such an interesting concept because if the internet's dead, then essentially when we go to get information off the internet, it's not information we can rely upon. Like it's not content that's authentic and genuine. So it's just like, well, shit, where do you get that now? Like I honestly don't know. So it's just the concept itself just blows my mind, and I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it. But as we go on in this conversation, I'm sure it'll start to resonate a little bit more for me. It's just crazy. It's so crazy.
It is really crazy. So the dead internet theory essentially claims that activity and content on the internet, including social media accounts, are predominantly being created and automated by artificial intelligent agents. And so it's absolutely crazy. And I see it all the time over TikTok because AI is advancing so much faster than any of us could have ever expected. And so you just see posts and people are like, is this real? Like it looks like AI, but like AI has become so advanced now, it's like hard to tell what's true and what's fake. And it's
And
honestly, it's a mind. It plays games on your mind.
no, it really does. Like I've seen a couple TikToks that looked so real. One that got me was I don't know if you've seen this one of the bunnies jumping on the trampoline.
I've not.
There's a video of it looks like some person has a camera and they're shooting in their backyard and there are like 5 or 6 bunnies jumping on a trampoline and it's really cute and you're just like, oh, look at the bunnies. And then one of the bunnies like
Okay.
disappears into midair. And then that's when it clicks when we're like even the commenters were like, oh my God, I've been tricked by AI. So it just goes to show how convincing it is today and how it's at this point gotten hard to distinguish truth from fiction online just with videos. Oh, it's crazy.
It is crazy. And so you have to also think about like people who are trying, going back to your question about the people who are trying to genuinely grow a business, but it's like when you add in community guidelines and being monitored and privacy and them obviously wanting to control the situation, control the narratives, it's like our ads just get removed because they don't want that truth out there. And I honestly think that's why, like, this whole push that they're doing with TikTok, it's like if you actually look at the conspiracies around who bought TikTok, it's all of the big conglomerates who can control the narrative, who can actually take away people's freedom of speech, who has the power to absolutely, because you have to understand what TikTok was or is. Like TikTok was a force that anyone could sign on to and speak freely about their opinions. They were, it's our First Amendment right, freedom of
Mm.
speech. And now that is being sold and then taken away. It's being reprogrammed. So they have total and complete control over the content that goes out on this app.
Right. And as far as I understand it, like that's the whole underpinning of the theory, right? Is that
Yes.
the bots are used to manipulate search results and
Yep.
algorithms so that content that they want people to see is pushed to the front.
Yes.
And I just feel like that totally and completely defeats the purpose, especially of the social media. Like when we first got on social media in like, what was it, the early 2000s? It was
Yeah.
exactly as you described. It was genuine, authentic connecting and community and expression. And we go all the way back to the MySpace time when it was
Which
even more than
that
that.
I'm pretty sure MySpace was launched in like 2004, 2005. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
is when MySpace was launched. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like complete creative control. You could change like the way your page looks and upload music, and you had the whole top, what was it, top 5 or top 6 friends. And if you ever
Yes.
changed that, it would become a problem with your friends. Like it was just like a whole different vibe. And you would make real connections through these platforms. And now it's just algorithms and promotions and marketing. And are you going to give us money? Because if you don't give us money, we're not going to show your content. And it's just not the same place anymore. And it's so disappointing. And so, it's interesting you said that changed, that it all changed in 2016. Um, because I think that was roughly around the time that I also noticed a change in my engagement, especially on Facebook. Like
Yes.
I would post content and I felt like no one was engaging or I wouldn't get comments or no one was seeing it. And it would get boring. Eventually I got bored with Facebook, which is why I'm not really on there anymore. No, I noticed that shift and it took away the spark from it, unfortunately. At least it did for me.
Well, the internet as a whole has lost its spark. And that's a lot of the reason why people are super pissed off about this TikTok sell, because it's like it was like our last, I guess, glimmer of hope, I guess is the right word to say, in terms of exercising our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. And now even that's being taken away from us. It's like the people in power just continue to take away from us and take away from us and take away from us until basically, till we become drones, which is exactly what they want. They want us just to become robots and bend to their will. And it's just dark. All of it. It's just really, really dark.
That is ultimately why I transitioned to TikTok a couple years ago. I was really drawn to the creative expression because I feel like when TikTok started coming about and getting popular, there was a lot of people dancing or, doing skits or singing. Like it was just a lot of creative expression. And I am a personal big fan of skits, like especially the ones that mock stuff that we should actually be paying attention to and care about, but we don't for some reason. Um, because it puts it back in your face and it like kind of reminds you, hey, there's this crazy thing going on that we need to pay attention to. But you do it in a creative way that captures, people's eyes. And I just loved that so much about TikTok. And to see that being taken away is so aggravating. Like after TikTok, I don't know where I'm gonna go. I mean, there's the Chinese one, the Chinese version. Xiaoyangshu, I think is. I'm sorry if you're Chinese and I just said that and that was terrible. But I forgot what it's called in English. There's a Chinese
I
version of
think it's called
TikTok.
like Red Book or
Red
Red
Book.
Note or Red
Red Book
Note
or
or
Red Note, yeah. Which still kind of has a little bit of that spark, but even then, like I can tell that there are some efforts from the Chinese to control a little bit of the stuff that gets put out. Like they want to be seen as like this fantastic country, and I get it. Like from what I heard, China is a very fantastic country. But even there, like there's still some of that little shadow of control. And so I'm just like, gosh, at this point, I don't know if social media is worth spending the time, unless you're a business maybe and you're willing to spend the marketing. But for connecting an authentic community, I don't know. Like, I don't know if social media is the place anymore.
Well, a lot of people are saying that like social media is it's donezo. It's dead. Like people are just saying they don't I mean, I think we all have to go back to basics. I think we all need to find ways to entertain ourselves that is not on a phone or on a computer or on a TV, not a screen, right? I think like we're being pushed back into basics where we should be picking up books and we should be meeting people human to human, like for coffee and or grabbing lunch or whatever, getting together, having more interpersonal connection. And I think that's the only good I see coming out of this whole social media debacle and the whole internet debacle is that it's going to kind of put us back into our roots. Now, you have to understand, like, Tiara and I are millennials. It's like we are the older millennial generation. We were born, I think the millennial generation started in 1981. So Tiara and I were both born in the 1980s. So like we are the older millennial generation, and the internet didn't become a thing, I believe, until 1993. And you have to understand the internet is not what it is today. Like we had dial-up internet and we didn't really spend
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of time on internet because it was so slow.
Yeah.
And so like we had a good solid, I don't know, when did the first iPhone come out or when did the first like smartphone come out? Like I think not even the BlackBerry was as advanced as like an iPhone or Samsung today. So it's like you have to understand it's like yeah, we did get the introduction to cell phones, but like that didn't come until we were like 16, 17 years old. And so us millennials, especially the older ones, like we know what life was like before technology, before screens. And I feel like the only advantage us millennials have is that we know what that world looked like. So I feel like it would be an easier conversion for us to go back to those ideals than, unfortunately, the younger generations today.
Oh man. Yeah, I remember like the late 90s, early 2000s when we first started to transition into like that whole cell phone era.
Right.
And I loved my first cell phone. It was a Nokia, and I remember it exactly. I put like the little purple face on it, and you had to pull out the antenna to talk on the
I
phone.
had one of
And then
those
if you wanted
too.
to text, yeah, okay. And if you wanted to text, it was like, press two times for the C or the B. And like, if you want a different letter, then you got to push the button like 4 times. And it was just
Yeah,
such
it
a
wasn't a
different
keyboard.
time.
It was not a
Yeah.
keyboard. Okay.
It's like,
It was
it
us like
wasn't.
pressing the button like 3 times to get the letter. And then if you pass it, you have to go through all of the letters
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, yeah. And then like once we had internet, it was like AOL chat rooms. I spent a
Yes.
lot of time on like the Yahoo Answers. Years ago, they used to have Yahoo Answers where people would just go and ask whatever question, like kind of like Quora, but just like, and some of the questions were like the most ridiculous stuff. And people would just go on there and troll, and it was entertainment for hours. So, like, that was before social media. We didn't have the social media. We just had like these other little things that we would do to still connect and interact. And it was a lot of fun.
I loved
So
AOL chat. I loved
I did
AOL chat.
too. I loved
I
it
thought
so
AOL chat
much.
was like the best thing ever.
Right. It really was. And then, oh my God, AOL was like that first conglomerate to really get into that email space. And so if you had an email, you would get the "you've got mail" notification.
Yes.
So we're going down nostalgia lane here for a minute. But gosh, it was just such a different time. So Ali's right. Like we sort of came up before the technology. We've got our experience of it. And now we're kind of seeing that shift back in some ways. And that's very unique for our generation, the millennial generation. But, with that said, like I like to think millennials are still pretty cool and hip. We do follow a lot of the trends when we can. And honestly, I hate to sound like arrogant prick, but I think we are the coolest generation. I think we are so cool. Like we were that generation that also went to the club and danced and had fun and made interactions with other people in that way. That's just I don't see in the same way. So, for all those reasons, millennials, best generation. I'm saying that live.
I can't necessarily say that I agree, but it's not because I think one generation is better than the other. I do think that us millennials, too, on the flip side, we also face a lot more challenges because it's really the millennial generation where the programming began. It's really like the millennial generation, we are the most educated generation like in the history of generations. And that's because we were lied to. We were sold a path, said, like, they told us, like, this is your road to success. And so we followed that path. And now a lot of us millennials are just like, well, you lied to us. And we are in so much debt. None of us are living. None of us, we're all of us are surviving. We're living paycheck to paycheck. I have no house. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have the success. I have nothing to show for following this path. And so you have to understand, like, us millennial generation, it's just on we're in a unique place because we know what life was like before technology hit. And honestly, life was simpler. Like, I'm not saying that before the internet, we didn't have our challenges. We absolutely did. I mean, growing up is growing up. We still hit puberty. We had adolescence, all the fun stuff. But what I am saying is that we are the first generation to really, really follow the success path of the programming that we were taught. And a lot of us are drowning in so much debt that so many people are just like, what do I do now? I'm drowning in debt. I don't feel like I have any money for fun. I just feel like I exist to be a slave and I have nothing to show for it. And now everyone's kind of like in this, I guess, limbo of what do I do with my life? There's no direction in my life. And so you have to understand, like, we were sold on if you do this, you are going to become successful. And so many of us grasped onto that and we followed the path. And now all of us are just like, where's the success? Where's what was promised to us?
Absolutely agree. It's interesting because I sometimes say our generation has like the most trauma, not just because of the programming that we grasped onto that failed us, but also I feel like our generation has experienced a lot of like disasters or like depressions, recessions, 9/11, COVID, the 2008 recession, like just a lot of stuff that has sort of hit us as we were kind of trying to grow into the more pivotal stages of life to become established. And it sort of all combined to affect our collective psyche And
Right.
I think you're absolutely right. We're now in this space where it's just like no direction. The direction we were told was false. I have $100,000 of student loan debts. I can't get a job. What am I supposed to do now? And it ends up feeling like a trap in many ways. Like we were fed a trap in
Yes.
so many ways,
Right.
especially that whole student loan thing. Like it still makes me angry the way that we were taught that you take the debt because the debt's going to be paid off. Like convinced 100% that the debt was going to be paid off. It was worth it. Don't like even worry about it. And the reality is so much further from that. And, I think collectively as a millennial generation, we kind of all have that shared experience as far as that struggle. Like the good times and also the bad times, sort of all collectively knowing, yeah, we're kind of all in a similar stage right now. What are we gonna do? We have no idea. I guess we'll just sit back and watch it all implode. So it's a very interesting millennials, and I don't say this to be again be arrogant or narcissistic, but we do have a very unique vantage point when it comes to like the internet shifts,
Mm.
societal shifts and changes,
Hmm.
and some of that programming.
Oh yeah, I love nostalgic TikToks. And it's so interesting because I do see people say, "What do you mean you older millennials just walked home from school by yourself like when you were 5?" Like, what do you mean that like you guys went outside and was just riding your bikes like down the neighborhoods like without supervision? Like, what do you mean that you guys just went trick or treating with 2 or 3 friends even though you were all the same age together and that was enough for your parents to be like, they'll be fine. Like all of that stuff, they do not do like parenting because the world has changed. Parenting has changed. And now
Yeah.
it's just like we had so much freedom. It's so crazy when I see the younger generations be like, this is for the millennials. Is this true that
Hmm.
you guys would just walk home from school by yourselves because like in today's world that's unfathomable.
Right. Oh, I see those too. And I'm just like, you're really asking that? Like
I know.
it was the type of freedom where your parents, your mother or your dad would say to you, "Okay, get out the house. Go outside.
Yes.
I don't care where you go. Get out the house.
Yep.
You come back when the street lamps come on." And that's
Yep.
exactly what we did. And that
That's
was that.
exactly what we did, you
Yeah.
guys.
Hmm.
And so
And it was amazing. It was freeing and fun. And it's just so unfortunate that the younger generations aren't having that same experience.
correct. And now, so bringing it back to like the internet is dead theory, I feel like we're just going to have to find other ways to connect and to form community. And I feel like this whole internet is dead theory, this is the only bright side I see of all of these, because unfortunately, we're all waking up. We know that the internet is fake. We know that social media is fake. We know that it's up to us on whether or not we're going to choose to remove ourselves from these platforms. But it's like, what happens when those platforms go away? Like the hours that we spend consuming all of this content, it's like, well, if we get off of social media, what are we going to do with all those hours? And so that's the only bright side I see to this happening is that we're kind of in a way being forced to go, and Tiara and I specifically, we're being forced to go back to our roots, like being forced to go back to when we were children, where we spend less time on technology because we didn't have an option then. And now we're being forced to like reconnect with people. And I think in that way, that's a very beautiful thing.
So, it's interesting because you would have to think that if you're a younger generation and you were born and grew up with the internet, that the idea of not having the internet or being able to rely upon it to connect and interact might be very jarring. So, we're talking about the millennial perspective because, again, we came up when there was no internet. But if that's all you know as far as how to interact with other people, the idea of it going away could blow your mind. It could be very unsettling. And I understand some of that. So we get that too. And, we're not trying to like freak people out, but I think it is important that we start thinking about that potential idea that it might be time to step away from the technology, especially if we're talking about a dead internet, because what are you going to do with a dead internet? Like, if the internet's dead, I don't understand what you're going to attain or achieve with it anyway. Um, so, like, I've seen some conversation, especially amongst millennials, about third spaces and how, as we've aged, those third spaces have sort of dissipated, like the YMCA's, or like even the bars or the lounges or the places where you could go and meet other people and interact. Like, a lot of those spaces don't exist like they used to because we shifted to like an internet space. So I do think it's time for us to even consider, as a generation or even a collective, like re-engaging those third spaces, because there's still a lot of value and beauty in connecting with people in that way as well.
Absolutely. So I actually want to go back to why having a dead internet is actually, in a lot of ways, quite dangerous, because unfortunately there's like strong evidence on social media that it's being manipulated and inflated by bots to sway public opinion with disinformation and false information. And, it's like what Tiara was saying in the beginning of the episode. It's just like, okay, so if everything's fake, then like, how do we know what's real and how do we know what's not real? And then it just kind of is left up to us to like use our intuition, to use, discretion in order to really dissect all of this information. But like, if I'd say a lot of the information is fake, people are believing this stuff. And it's just like, how do we correct it? It's just like, do people even know that this theory exists? Do people even know that, like, I didn't know that the dead internet theory was a thing until like a month ago, and I got lucky by just passing through it on Reddit, and I was like, that seems really interesting. And so I opened up the rabbit hole and I started to go down it, and I did not realize how dark all of this was. But it also makes sense because Tiara and I have experienced our engagement on social media shifting. It shifted so much that I actually closed my Instagram account. I closed my Facebook account because I was like, it's not even real anymore. It's like, I don't even know if I'm connecting to real people anymore. It's just so like something about the internet is not right.
Yes, and I've seen the same thing, especially on Instagram. And, I mentioned stepping away from Facebook for the same reason. But I've just kind of been looking around a little bit since I started thinking about this whole dead internet theory. And I have seen followers on Instagram that have like 200,000 people as their followers, maybe more than that. And then their posts might get like 2 or 3 likes or comments. And I'm just like, why is the engagement so drastically different? And it just kind of goes to show the impact of the dead internet concept when it comes to bots and all of that, fake engagements. Because again, when it comes to social media, it's just so fake, so fake. So again, we don't go into these conversations to freak people out. I know that a lot of people have never heard of the dead internet theory. I also hadn't heard of it till more recently, but I think it's something we should start thinking about collectively, because the impact of that is it's kind of scary. I know a lot of us rely on Google for basic searches, and I do still rely on Google. But now, when I look at it through the lens of fake internet, I'm just like, well, are those results like authentic results, or are these results that were pushed to the top because of algorithms and bots? Like, just stuff like that, that is worth thinking about when you're online trying to find information. And we've mentioned it a couple times on this podcast that if you're looking for new age or spiritual information online, please take a lot of it with a grain of salt. A lot of it is distorted misinformation. So I'm just going to put that out there again as we talk about this topic.
It is. And I mean, it has steered people in the wrong direction. Sadly, I can't tell you how many times like I've been on Reddit and I see people say, I feel like I've been on this journey for 4 or 5 years now and I feel like I've gotten nowhere. And you have to understand, for a person who has the courage to even consider taking this journey, because this journey is not easy. And so people put the time and energy and make the choice to decide, like, I want something better for myself. And when you hit the internet, it's just people are just like, I just feel like I've been on this journey for years and I'm getting absolutely nowhere. And then you have to understand like how frustrating and disheartening and how discouraging all of that is, to the point where either people give up or people just accept themselves as they are.
It's so interesting because I thought for a long time that the internet we have access to was the good internet. Like it was the good information where you can find anything you wanted and anything you need versus the dark internet, which is where they do all of that bad stuff. But now I'm seeing that there's really not that much of a difference. Unfortunately, it's all manipulated to negatively affect us, control us, um, prop up greed and specific um, companies that are paying money to get their information in the front. And so it's just, you need definitely need that discretion when you're online now. Unfortunately, it's just kind of the lay of the land at this point. And it's really unfortunate for those on a spiritual journey because, when I started my spiritual journey, I went to the internet first. That was back in my first awakening, which was in 2019. So this was after the proposed death of the internet. So yeah, I stumbled into so much distorted information about the process and the journey and what you need to do and what it takes. And I just wonder if I would have had more of that discretion, would I have been misled in that same way? So, we say that to give you guys a heads up because, again, as Ali mentioned, this is not an easy journey. And you want to have access to that information that's going to help get you to that next stage. But unfortunately, you just got to really practice discretion and discernment for any of that information online, which is why we created a space. There are some reliable spaces on Reddit, but I would focus more on the ones that talk about things like shadow work or reprogramming the mind, or even some of the work from some of the theorists like Carl Jung versus like the starseed groups or like the spirituality groups, just, in my opinion. So these you can find the information. You just got to really dig, use your intuition, use that discernment to find what you need.
Okay, Tiara, let's talk about this. What does a person do if they don't feel like that they can trust their intuition?
So when I was first starting, I leaned on books. Now, books are very similar. You still need that level of discernment, but they at least helped me prepare a little bit of a foundation for some of the deeper work. If you're struggling to connect to your intuition or trust your intuition, you're going to probably have a difficult time because now the choices that you're making are through the lens of the ego, right? And like, if you are thinking about, oh my gosh, I want to get through this and I want to ascend as quickly as possible, you're going to probably gravitate towards things that are like, hey, we're going to help you ascend in 3 days and sign up for this course. And I coach and help people to, overcome their limitations so they can become the best version of themselves. And I do it in a week. So I would recommend if you are just getting started, you're in that spiritual space, you want information, or maybe you want a path to see if you can find someone who does the deeper type of work. So I'm not talking about like the love and light stuff because everyone does that. I'm talking about something that will help you go inward into your subconscious to help you find the blocks and limitations that you can overcome them. And oftentimes that's not always a spiritual person, that could be a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist,
Mhm.
or someone with a psychology degree. It doesn't necessarily have to be a spiritual coach or guru. So I would recommend just expanding your horizons a little bit beyond the confined space of New Age into other modalities that could help you go inward. And again, look at the subconscious and the subconscious psyche, because ultimately, when it comes to doing this level of work, that's where you're going to need to go anyway. Like you might not do it right away. It might take a couple years before you start doing that level of work, but that's what you're going to have to do. So I would point you in that direction and away from like the love and light, butterflies and rainbows. Now, I personally did spend a lot of time looking at YouTube tarot readings. I have mixed sentiments about that. It was fun and I found some great readers. But a lot of it was nonsense. I'm sorry. I just gotta say, a lot of it wasn't helpful. So
Okay, and why wasn't some of that helpful?
it was just a lot of, you know, your twin flame, he's going to come back to you. That lover of yours, he's thinking about you. Um, like a lot of stuff that would put you in that kind of delulu state, just a lot of delulu. And not enough of, hey, this is your block. This is what's affecting you. This is what you need to work on. This is how you can overcome it. A lot of it was, Spirit says you're doing a great job. Keep up that hard work. You should focus on incense and crystals. Your twin flame's just around the corner. Keep it up. And you can imagine when you're on a journey and you're struggling with blocks and limiting beliefs, how that's not necessarily the most transformative type of information, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. I was just curious on your take. So, if you knew that the internet was dead, okay, you're watching this, and if you know that the internet is dead, and as a person who did get caught up in the love and light, if you had a redo, a do over, what would you change and where would you start?
Oh, that's a great question. I would probably step away from the YouTube readings. I mean, again, they're fun, and I had a lot of fun watching hours and hours and hours of those. Uh, but I don't think I'd lean so heavily on them the way I did prior. I would also probably stay away from a lot of those Facebook groups. I know that there are a ton of spiritual Facebook groups, and some of them at this point have millions of people. And a lot of it is very love and light. I didn't see any information in any of these groups about shadow work, introspection, subconscious work, bringing subconscious to the conscious to balance. I didn't see anything like that on any of those groups. I would probably steer clear of those. And I would probably spend more time trying to find teachers or healers that more or less know what they're doing, particularly when it comes to transformation and what that truly entails. Uh, so if I could do a do over, I'd probably go that route. I'd probably also avoid some of these conversations I had with some of these Facebook healers because, oh my God, there's so many of them. They're all pitching their services, they're in your inbox, they're offering you stuff. I fell for some of it and I got this close, guys, like this close into getting wound up in that whole twin flame universe thing, like this close. Like someone sent me a message about my twin flame and like we chatted a little bit and I was like, hey, yeah, I have a twin soul and maybe you can help me. And just something was off about it. It was one of the few times I actually listened to my intuition because, I usually never did. But
True
one of those
story.
few times that I did, and I was like, let me step away from this. And then it turned out that she was a twin flame universe. What are they, recruiters? I don't know what you call them.
I guess you could call them recruiters.
I don't know. So yeah, I would step back from a lot of that social media and just really focus on hitting the ground running when it comes to getting deeper into myself and my psyche.
Okay, but I know for a fact back in 2019, you weren't ready for that. You were terrified of that. It took me like a year and a half to warm you up to that. So I understand that that's your recommendation, but what do you do when you're just scared crapless out of your mind?
Well, a good professional will address those concerns and fears. And the only thing is that when I was looking at some of these healers, these were love and light healers. So there wasn't really that focus on the deeper stuff, but they were at least willing to answer some of those questions. And I remember going into a QHT session, which is quantum healing technique. It's kind of like QHHT, but this is the version that can be done like remotely over the internet. And she was amazing at answering some of the questions and fears that I had and assuaging those. So if you're having fear around doing that, you can ask questions. I can't say that having those questions answered are going to assuage all those fears because I feel like for a lot of people, there's some type of, I don't know, like existential dread when it comes to going deeper into the psyche. And that can't necessarily be solved by people answering questions. It's kind of something you got to work through on your own and really get to that place where you're like, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm going to set that aside to do this because that's what matters more. And again, that could take time for a lot of people. So it's I guess that's two answers. One is to see if there's someone who's willing to answer some of those questions about your fears. Because
Okay.
again, those professionals that know what they're doing and really want to help will answer those questions. And if it's an existential thing, you got to just sit with it and work through it and figure out why it's there and how it's stopping you from progressing the way you need to.
I'm really happy that we're talking about this, and I'm sure that we're going to do another episode on this. But it's just heartbreaking for me to see how people let fear completely control their lives. That people are more comfortable in fear running from themselves or running from their situation than they are to just stop, take a breath and just sit with yourself. It's just like that's the thing that, and I'm pretty sure that this was all part of design, right? It's like they have made everything so convenient for us and they have made our lives easier and they have made, they've made information. It's like I said, we are in the age of information right now. Information's freaking everywhere. And it's just like, oh, you need something answered real quick. Just ask AI, just ask Chat GPT, or just go onto Google, or just, and they have, it's like if you talk to any, if you see any, if you listen to any podcasts that like with like renowned brain doctors are just saying that like, this whole thing with TikTok, like 60-second clips, it's actually killing our attention spans. It's actually people are developing ADHD. Like people are actually, it's just because, you have to understand like dopamine levels and cortisol levels and how like, it's like we are tricking our brains into like, short-term satisfaction. And it's just like when, it's like our dopamine levels will rise, like when we get excited about seeing like content that we like. And it's just like, but because it's so short, it's like our brains are just always needing to be stimulated. And so when we're always needing to be stimulated, you have to understand what happens to us. It's just, we don't know how to be bored. We don't know how to sit with ourselves. We don't know how to be bored, because when we're bored, is actually when creativity comes out of us, because it's like we're bored. Okay. It's like before the internet, when I was bored, I had a million things to do, million freaking things to do, like puzzles, games, go ride my bike around the neighborhood, go for a walk, meet up with friends on the playground. Like we went from being creative, creating arts and crafts. Like I was an arts and crafts fiend. Like, my mother taught me how to knit. My mother taught me how to crochet, just things I was just like, hey, like keeping myself busy, but in creative spaces. And so, like, now you have to understand that in this generation, we don't know how to be bored. People can't stand at like us on the sidewalk waiting for the light to turn without pulling out their phones and being like, okay, what's going on with my phone until that light turns green and I can walk across the street. It's like people don't know how to sit with themselves. And I'm pretty sure that this was all by design. But you also have to understand the repercussions of like the repercussions of all of this, and why we don't have time for ourselves, and why we don't make time for ourselves, and why we don't, if we're never bored, how can we create? And we create, and we need to create to grow.
Yeah, it's almost like this whole dead internet concept is a blessing and a curse because, gosh, I agree so much that our collective attention span has completely plummeted. Like, I even see it in myself sometimes when I'm scrolling, and it's just like
Yep.
I'm scrolling, looking for like that next really cool video that's going to capture me and excite me. And it's just, it has a snowball effect on other aspects of yourself and your life that you don't even think about or consider just from being on an app, a social media app. But it does, it extends beyond that and it affects you in different ways. And I didn't know that so many people were actually developing ADHD from that. Like, I see
Oh yeah.
ADHD everywhere. Like, I
Oh
know
yeah.
so many people that have or claim to have ADHD, and they swear that they don't have the attention span, that they can't sit with themselves, that sitting still is very difficult for them.
Mhm.
And it's just, it's everywhere. And I'm just like, what has happened to us?
Well, it's all
What
by
has happened to
design.
us?
It's all by design. And you have to understand, it's like if with this dead internet theory and them programming AI, it's like they can program whatever information that they want to feed us. And so I think it is really important that more people know about this dead internet theory. Like Google it, do your own research. That information is out there. Like they're still writing articles on it to this day. And honestly, the blessing I see in it is that we're going to go back to some of our roots, especially for us millennials, before we even had internet.
I think there's a subset of millennials that would be happy to do that, honestly. Like, we know what it's like. We had a good time back then at that time. So many millennials are so nostalgic about the past. It's very interesting that so many of us are in that state.
But it's also
But
a very different time in 2025. It's not like, clubs it's like we could afford to go to the clubs when we were in our early 20s. We could
yeah,
afford to
yeah,
we could afford to do weekend trips. We could afford to, go somewhere for a long weekend. We can't do that in 2025.
I know. I know. That's the unfortunate reality of being alive in 2025. But as far as stepping away from the internet and social media and still knowing how to function, I
Yes.
think millennials could pull it off. I do think they could.
But so that is our topic for today, you guys. I think it's really, really interesting. And the thing about conspiracies is that most of them end up being true. So just throwing it out there. I mean, I've heard more people, even CIA, like ex-CIA agents who have podcasts. I've listened to them and they're just like, oh yeah, like a lot of conspiracies are true.
That's so interesting because when I first started getting on the internet, maybe a couple years after, I was a big fan of really big conspiracy sites. I don't even know if this site is still
Yeah, they
around
probably don't even
anymore.
exist anymore,
I
truthfully.
know. I know, but like it was just this massive site where like every conspiracy you could possibly think of was being discussed in some way. And I just remember seeing a lot of people being like, I know we're on this site talking about conspiracies, but let's see how many of these turn out to be true. And so
Okay.
far, I think all of them have.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like most conspiracies, and like they're conspiracies for a reason. That information is out there for a reason. It's just no one can prove it, which is why they're conspiracies. But a lot of them end up being true.
Yes.
And
So
so the message in this is just be careful with the internet and do your own research because this is all by design. And I believe it.
I do too. I do too.
So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. And I hope you actually enjoyed that we recorded video. And I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Again, a shout out to YouTube for subtitling in many different languages. Like, obviously, the audio will be in English, but the captions, you can change it to like 10 or 15 different languages, which is awesome.
Yes, and please do check out our new website. It is www.goddessvibrationpodcast.com.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. And I hope everyone has a fantastic week.
All right. Thanks, you guys.